Right, I am Hot Wobble, and I'm going to break down another beat today that I'm putting out also today. And the clips are going to go out on social media and all that stuff over the next week or two. But anyway, if you're on YouTube, you're going to get the whole shebang right now. Here we go. So this project is called Young Blood Beat, right? I don't know why I called it that, but whatever. I name things very impulsively. But anyway, so let's get into it. Let's look at what this beat is made out of. Let me talk you through how I put it together, what the components are, and what kind of plugins I'm using, what kind of techniques I'm using. Let's just break the whole beat down for you, right? So usually how I start these things is with some kind of sample and some kind of drums, right? And the way I think of writing is there's kind of three steps. You want to get something happening, then you want to turn that something into an arrangement, right? And then you do your mixing and your polishing and making it sound like $1,000,000, all that kind of stuff. So as you can see, right, I laid out the whole track here. I started with just the verse and the hook part. That's pretty much what I always start with. I make something and I make something else. Then I start to block out the form, figure out what my breaks are going to be, my intros, my outros, all that kind of filler, any kind of little ear candy like transition sounds, all that kind of stuff. So getting into the verse, let's see what this is. This is a sample. Little melody loop, right? Cool. Forget where it's from. Might be a Cymatics one. I downloaded a ton of their stuff recently. They make good stuff. I recommend. Anyway, so there's that. So then what I did is, well, before I put drums in after that, but there's a drum loop that I'm actually using alongside programmed drums that I did myself. So there's kind of both, right? Here's where I actually made the drum part, right? That's in a drum rack, and then it's muted because I pulled all of these out individually to have their own track. One, so I could mix them better. Two, so when I sell this beat, if somebody wants track outs, all that stuff is all boom, 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 just lined up for them. So that's always just like a good practice. Is like something like this drum loop, I can't really do that, but because it's already crunched down. But if I program the loop, then I absolutely can do that, and I always will for people. Right? So we have this melody loop. Oh, excuse me, there's a melody loop, right? But I don't like to just take a sample and kind of drop it in and not do anything to it. And in this case, all I'm really doing, there's some delay. I EQ'd out some of the lows to make room for my other parts. And I have some EQ going on in the fab filter. But then what I did is I put in this glass harmonica thing. So here's the harmonica alone. There it is. So it's super spacey, very high, because I wanted to just basically make the melody component of this a little bit brighter. And I probably tried to brighten it up with EQ, but sometimes it's better just to like figure out what the notes are, which is what I did here, and layer that on top with a brighter sound, thinking like an orchestrational kind of way, rather than trying to beat it into place with plugins, right? And then the other thing I did, right, is, let me open up some automation here. I guess here I changed up, I made it even brighter in this part by opening up the filter. That's what this automation curve is. Then I pull it back down, right? But also, I'm using this auto pan, so if you just listen to this in headphones, you can even see it over here in the meter. You see how it's shifting around? It's going left, right, left, right. Just real slow, not in time with the track, just kind of at its own pace. Whatever this is, 0.55 hertz, that's the modulation rate. That's just to add some motion and interest to things, right? Cool. So we got that. Let's look at the next layer without moving it around. I might have just moved some stuff around. I just did move some stuff around. Let's hit undo. Dun, dun, dun. Okay. So let me expand this. Cool. So next we have our 808. Pretty simple 808 to synthesize. This is one sample I dropped into the Ableton sampler and just transposed around, right? Very well documented on YouTube how to do that, but I'm not going to get into that now because this video is more about the big picture stuff, right? So very simple 808. In terms of the EQing, right? What I'm doing is I'm scooping out a big chunk of the lows because that's where the kick drum is going to hit. I want to make room. Like I'm monitoring the kick drum in here, right? So you see watch the little red wave that pops up, right? I can get out of the way. Come on, Ableton. Oh yeah, here it is. Yeah. Yeah, so whenever there's kicks, you see how the hump and the kick is like right around here, and I scooped out of the 808 just so you could have like a place for each of them. That's a big part of making beats and just mixing in general, is making sure that there's a place for everything. So anyway, that's our melody loops, bass, and then in this case for this section of the tune, right? I'm just using a drum loop that I liked, right? And I don't think I even did that. No, I didn't do anything to it. This is always fun. Right? No effects on it, just as is. Good sounds go a long way, alright? So that's this section. This is what I'm calling like the verse section of the tune. Let me jump ahead to the hook, because that's usually what I'll write next. Right? And then I'll worry about tying it together later. Like I said, I always try to just go for something and something else, right? And I'm going to try to keep this not super long. People get ADD on the internet, me included. So here, now we change things up, right? I'll go to the break in a second. I introduce my program drums here, right? I'm still using this 808 part, that's just a copy paste, right? But I introduce a new sound. Is it the same? Let me see what. So you have one melody loop over here, a different one over here. I forget where I got this from. This might be a splice, or it might be from my library somewhere. This looks like splice, but based on the metadata. And then notice I'm tying it together by using this sound, this glass harmonica sound on top, just like over here. So I'm taking a little bit of this melody, right? Right, or something related to this melody, and using this as kind of the connective tissue to tie it over into our hook, right? Now let's talk about the program drums, right? Because this is maybe what a lot of people would come here for, right? Well, let's go where this is where I actually programmed it, right? This is it, right? And this is just a basic, kind of hip-hop drum pattern, right? Nothing real crazy. Real busy hi-hat. One thing, I hate it when hi-hats are too static. It's too, like, machine gun, the same. So what I like to do is I like to have one hi-hat sound and then another one to break it up, and then usually some pitch modulation to just give some variety in here. Let's see if I'm doing that. Oh, here we go. Boom. All right, close hats. You come over here to the LFO. I'm modulating the pitch with the LFO, right? So here, I'll put it on without. That's with. Right? So it just helps, again, I'm big on adding modulation to things to add some motion and just help carry you through stuff rather than, especially hi-hats, which can get kind of like an ice pick, just like stabbing you in the head. Especially, like, I hate when I'm in like a big club, big system, and the hi-hats are too loud and it's just like piercing my brain. The worst, right? So I always like to allow for that. I like to make sure it sounds good in the studio, in the car, but also through like a humongo sound system, so the live experience is good for people. So that's where I actually wrote it. Like that hi-hat trick is something that's pretty simple to implement. Transposing these guys around. And then I have a couple different snares. And, well, no, really two. It's a snare and a clap. So let me put this back on so you can hear each, right? And the idea is it's nice to have two things with different pitch, little different frequency content, and different stereo image if possible. Because then you'll have like one thing hitting in the middle, usually a snare, and then I like to put a wide clap around it. And then everything, without having to mix that much, has its own place, just by listening to what kind of stereo images you're combining, right? So that's that. So, like I explained, these are all separated now for the sake of track outs. And then I have some effects on each of these drums, like if you go to my kick, some fab filter stuff, some that's just a compressor to help emphasize the transient. Here I'm using the opposite EQ curve of the 808, so I'm scooping out where the 808 sits a little bit higher, and then giving a little bit bump of the fundamental to make sure that that is very well defined, right? It looks like I tried a transient plugin and didn't like it, so I settled on shaping the transient with the compressor. If you want to see my settings real quick. All right, threshold ratio is pretty heavy. attack time kind of on the slow side to let the front of the kick through, and a fast release to make sure it recovers in time, because there's some quick kick hits that I want to make sure the compressor hits all of them, basically. So there's that. And then what else can I show you? My brakes. Simple. Brakes, I just take stuff away. In this case, oh, here's something interesting. I took this melody and wrote out some chords. So we go from this and play through. Right, so as the drum pattern changes, the sound doesn't completely change. You're not. It doesn't feel like you're turning on a different song. But the part does change to help guide you through into the next hook, what I'm calling the hook part, right? Somebody could buy this and chop it up however they like. But anyway, so that's that. Intro is kind of a combination, right? We have my program drums, right, with basically just things subtracted. I put a little fill at the end, I think. Oh, and let me see. Did I catch that little drop in there? I think I sampled something. Let me see where I could find where. Boo, 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 boo. Let me see, maybe on my drums. Oh, I guess, yeah, it's a little sample. Oh, I did a pitch drop. That's it. Okay. Just, again, this is what I would consider ear candy. If I go into my automation, go to transposition, I just took this one little clip and transposed it down, I think, an octave. Yeah. Just that little woo, right? Just to have some kind of, some sound to show you, like, oh, we're going into the next thing, right? That's basically the purpose of that. And then, let's see, break verse. This is more repeated material. Where your feature comes in, whatever. Another break. In this case, I chose to make the break, just the same both times, because we're going into something a little different. Oh, no, we're not. My bad. Oh, is this the same? Yeah. Okay, this just repeated the hook. Easy. I just put a little crash cymbal. Little something, right? On the beat, I changed a little bit. I put that little just to give it a little bit more bounce. Some upbeat. And then a final hook. Did I change anything else up huge here? Not really. Very simple, right? So basically, yeah, that's the beat, right? There's not a lot more happening. There's a little bit of reverb and stuff. Oh, let me show you the drum bus before I call it here, right? So I always like to group together all my drums and process them together on one bus. That's really helpful. In this case, I'm using the Vertigo Sound quad compressor, right? Via C2. It's a little confusing. It's via C2, but they call it quad discrete. I don't know why they made that, but anyway. Sounds great. That's the main thing. And how I like to compress this is kind of lightly just like controlling peaks in this case, right? So you can see the ratio is pretty high. The ratio is at 8. But I'm setting the threshold so it's just catching the tops of stuff. It's not crunching the whole thing, right? And then the attack time is such that it's letting through a little bit of the point at the front of notes, a little bit of makeup gain, and also a fast release. Oh, another note, I have the sidechain filter at 90 hertz. So that means that the kicks aren't going to be triggering the compressor, because I don't want it to get too pumpy. I want it to just control the peaks in the hi-hats and snares and claps and all that kind of stuff. So that's that. Ableton Drum Bus, one of my favorite plugins ever. Just a little bit of drive and crunch, just different kinds of distortion. And I'm using the kick, or like low-end synthesizer, just to beef up the kick, right? And make it. So let me play it without, so you can hear the difference. It's quieter. This was adding gain, it's distortion stuff, but you hear how the kick is also weaker. Now that the kick is supported, right? And then I'm also doing some transient enhancement here just to make it tap. You could see in the other track I tried to do that on individual things, like on the kicks. Didn't like it, said no. See, on claps, did I do anything? What am I doing here? This looks like a little bit of EQ work and compression. Again, compression settings if you want to screenshot that, take notes, whatever. Ratio of 4, fast attack, fast release. Let's go through the rest. Just see. My light snare. Oh, this is another thing. I'm a big fan, if I'm trying to like get stuff to sound separate, I like to use different EQs. I really think that different EQs are kind of like different colors of, or different kinds of paintbrushes or something. So if I'm trying to get two sounds to sound more different, not only will I EQ them differently, sometimes I like to use two completely different EQs. In this case, I am using a Neve 1073 UAD clone or whatever, so that's cool. Some of these might not even have anything. Okay, here's another example, rim knock, another high sound I'm trying to have separate. Oh wait, no, look at that. I have it on and it's not doing anything. Great. So technically there's nothing on that. I could go ahead and turn this off. Sweet! Let's keep going. Close hi-hats. I already showed you the pitch modulation trick. No processing. Awesome. Right? None of that. None of that. None of that. Yeah, these are all basically dry. The only thing they're hitting is the master drum bus stuff. And then let's look at the master bus. I always have a lot going on. Just break down the whole signal chain. Alright. Bus compressor. Always use one of these. It helps glue everything together. This is the Elysia one. It's really good. I've used the SSL one. I've used hardware compressors. But this is an awesome plugin one. Let's see what else I got here. Come on. Okay. Analog design, black box. This thing is sick. It just adds very musical, very warm kinds of saturation. It gives a lot of depth to things. The plugin's really good. This thing is so good. It's on my gear wish list. I would love to have the hardware version of this and just get that little extra version of detail that the actual box gives you. I just have some stuff to get it loud. This is like pseudo mastering. Just a little. I scooped lows out of the sides to just open up space. These are a couple filters just to get a little. There was a little bit of mud and ringing in a couple areas, so I just like to filter those out. A little bit of multi-band action, not much. Let me just play it, see what it's doing. Oh, I guess I'm hitting the low end. It looks like I was trying to balance the relationship between kick and snare. So you can see I'm hitting the low end to keep that steady as well as the high mids. And then the rest is all metering. If you want to see what I use. Brainworks meter, very good. I always like to check against a couple meters. Ableton Spectrum is fun for looking at the spectrum, and this is the Metric AB. It's an AB plugin. You can bounce between your mix and a bunch of references that you loaded in, which you can see I have here. And there's also a bunch of good tools in here. You can see I was referencing some J Dilla, always a good thing. So there's a loudness meter, dynamics graph, stereo imaging, more stereo correlation metering, and your spectrum, as well as a wave playback. So that's just what I use to bounce between my mix and other people's mixes to check my work. So anyway, that's it. Please like and subscribe and leave any questions you have in the comments. I'm going to do more of these mix breakdown videos or beat breakdown videos just because I get good feedback on them, and I think it's a fun way to learn. Sometimes just seeing how somebody did something is helpful rather than spoon feeding you stuff. So anyway, you know what to do. Until next time, peace out.